Welcome back. Episode 5. Here we go. All right. So we got Hermes set up. We have GitHub set up. Now we need to start setting up Supabase, our database. So essentially, our database is where our tables, our schema is for the data that we're collecting, your storage buckets, all that good stuff. So this is where we create tables. We do user auth. That's how people sign in. You can get their profile, any type of data that you want to use and manipulate. And this later can be tied with NAN, of course, your front end. NAN, you could set up automations that feeds data into Supabase, which then is tied to your front end, and then you can have agents query that that information. So we'll be going over, secrets and variables, what you should never show. You never show your secrets. And then we'll get into setting up this with staging and main. Staging will be driven by our Hermes agent. And then main is where we'll populate and transform our schema from staging into main. And then that will be tied with our other VPS machine, which won't have an agent. So you have two separate stagings, and it's essentially tied to GitHub too. So you know how we have GitHub with staging and main. So you have to think about that as with your database as well. So you have a staging database. That's where you do all your tests. That's where Hermes is going to be connected to, so that you have full control. You can have your NAN workflows connected to. You do all your dev within that staging. You make sure it's all good. And then when it is good, you push to main. And when GitHub pushes to main, it then builds in Cloudflare and then looks at the tables within the main production, and then will be tied to your VPS machine for anything running in the background, like your NAN automations. So this will be where we're setting up Supabase, Cloudflare, the connections between, and then doing the initial build of our Next.js framework for the front end. And then that'll have like libraries and a client and server set up within it for how the front end reads from the back end, and also how clients view and what kind of data do we send to the server and to just the client, and all that back and forth. All right, so we're on Supabase. So we want to sign in with our domain login that we created. Let's connect with GitHub, which we're signed in with that account. So we'll authorize Supabase. Now, you'll connect all this, and then that will help later with, then we'll connect GitHub in terms of when it does builds and how it connects with Supabase and Hermes and all that good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to put in BuildWithPXL. We'll do personal, and we'll start off with free. Now, when setting up main, this will set up the main production. We're going to want a staging environment. I believe that costs like $10 a month, but we'll get into that. So update your schema and code, push it into GitHub. We'll connect this later once we get into that. Let's just set up all the project. Organization, and then we could just, I'm going to change this to just build with Pixel. Now put in a very strong password. I always choose my own. America's data API automatically expose new tables. I would do, I mean, for since you're new, RLS, and we'll get into this, are policies for your tables. Who can view, who can insert, who can delete. And these tables is what drives your front end, what the user can see and what they have access to, so that you don't want to have one You don't want a user to be able to access another user's table information. And that's what policies do. They've let you insert, select, delete, update, all that good stuff. So for now, we'll just enable automatically. You can always change that later. But that's when we'll start using like SQL to drive your tables and settings, which ChatGPT is very good at. So first, I'm going to change this brightness because it destroys my eyes. Where do I do that at? That is here. Okay. Classic dark. Okay, so initial overview of Supabase. You have main. Up here is your essentially your project, your branch of your project. So this is main. Now, we don't want main. We're going to want staging that's going to be tied to our staging environments for GitHub and Hermes. Now, okay, so it's building right now. So we'll let it build, and I'll just go over some information. So within the settings, you'll see your project name, your project ID. Now this will be tied to your URLs. So this is like a key variable that we will put into Cloudflare that says, "Hey, we're using this URL. Direct all of our tables and information that we get to this URL." So that's that, and you'll see that later on. And then we'll come back whenever this all populates, and then we'll go over more information. Okay, so it's all built. So right now, again, we're in main. Table editor, this is where we'll create our tables and essentially give it columns of what kind of data you want. We'll go to that SQL editor. This is basically command line for if you want to use commands. And I do this a lot with ChatGPT. I want to say like, hey, I want to create a table for this. It gives me the SQL. Put in here. It creates the tables, the RLS policies, all that good stuff. And then you have like storage. You can use storage for files. You can create a bucket. So if like people were creating images through your site or video files, you would create a bucket to where when they're created, it goes into that bucket for that user. Edge functions are functions that can be utilized from the front end or called upon to activate through Supabase. And then if you go into authentication, so essentially in here we will set up like Google Auth. There's all different types of authentication you can do. We're going to start simple and do Google Auth. In URL configuration, this is where we'll set up our site URL for staging and for our main site. Again, it will be done for each environment. And then this is providers. And we'll go through all this, but this is basically the overview. I would look into it. We're not going to go over every single thing in Supabase because it's quite a lot, but we'll go through the essentials of how we get it all hooked up. So right now we're on main. Now, I don't want to do anything on main because we don't even have our VPS for main set up. We want to get staging all the way there. And then once we're happy with staging, we'll set up the VPS machine and then populate our data from and our schema from staging to main. So I want to go in here and I want to create a branch. Now you got to upgrade to Pro. So go ahead and do that. And then we'll come back. Okay, so we upgraded. So I'm going to go to create branch. I'm going to call this staging build with pixel. Now we're going to configure this with our staging branch for our app. So I'm going to sync with GitHub, connect with GitHub, and then continue. authorize. And then we'll let that. Okay, so I'm going to choose the repository. I'm going to add. We got to pick our organization. Now, I only want to select, make sure you can see this. I only want to select the ones that I need for the front end, which is going to be my app. So I don't need Hermes runtime infra and a starter kit. I need my app. So that's going to be our web app. And then install and authorize. Now I have an authorization, which everyone should do. So if you don't have this, you just move on. Okay, so you click on this. Now this is something that we're on. This integration is within main. So I'm going to leave this. I'm not going to enable this integration yet. I want to go back to staging. So let's go create branch. We'll go staging dash build with pixel. And then, of course, do your own name. I'm not going to do this just yet. And then create branch. Again, this creates the staging branch. Now, one thing that's crucial, and this got me a couple months ago, is within Supabase, when you create a branch like this, it's not persistent right away, meaning once you merge to main, it will wipe the branch. So you need to make sure you go to manage branches, staging, build with pixel, manage branches, and switch to persistent. Let's make sure you can see this. Switch to persistent. Now, that means this staging branch is always going to be active. You'll see up here it changed. Now we're in the staging, no tables, nothing set up. Now, there's a few things that you should be aware of. Now, when we get into building our app and populating the repo, you're going to have variables. You're going to have your Supabase anon key, which is public, your URL, which is public, and then your service role key, which will essentially overwrites anything. And when that's used, that has access to everything within Supabase, within your project. Now, you never show that stuff. You never hard code it, never give it to anyone. Now, you can view those within project settings, API keys. If you go to legacy, you can see your anon key, and it's this long key, and then your service role. Don't ever reveal. I mean, you can reveal it to copy it on your own time, but don't ever give that to anyone. But we'll go over more of those type stuff or those situations. Okay, so now we have Supabase set up. Now I want to get into Cloudflare and I want to set up our worker. And then I'm going to tell Hermes, hey, here's our worker. I want to populate the repo. We have a staging environment and main. I want to populate staging with a base structure for Supabase setup, auth authorization, and then Cloudflare. So let's go through that. Okay, so now this is where I would recommend transitioning from using ChatGPT to now using Hermes, your agent. Now, of course, have ChatGPT up. It's always good to validate and feed off each other. So you're going to use, because right now you should have ChatGPT 5.5 hooked up to your agent. So it's basically the same thing as ChatGPT here. Now, in right now I use mine as Kimmy is the main, and I use ChatGPT 5.5 within it as sort of a validator, verifier, as well as one that Kimmy goes to whenever there's extreme coding tasks and all that. So now I went through and I said, "Hey, we've set up our Supabase environment. We've we have our build commands, variables that we're going to or build commands that we're going to put in, the branch control, compatibility flags, and then now I want you to set up a game plan for me for custom domain and all that, so we can prep this." Now within Cloudflare, if we're in the, and I'll come back to this, like if we go back to the workers, we're going to set up our worker. Now, essentially, I have, Herm or Atlas, give me a setup. We have these commands that we're going to set up. We have to set that up in our worker, and we need to tie it to GitHub. Okay, we're going to create an application in workers and pages. If you need to search for it, just search over there, workers and pages, go there, create application. I'm going to continue with GitHub. Now, it's the same process that you did in Supabase with connecting your GitHub. Connect to your app repo. So I'm connecting to this. Project name, I'm going to say build with pixel staging. The build command, I'm going to use this. And I've prepped Hermes with this. Deploy command, I'm going to use that. Now, this is just for staging, so I don't need non-production branches because this is the non-production branch. I'm going to set this to web because that's going to be the folder within the repo that it pulls everything from. And then all of that is fine. Now I'm going to hit deploy. Now what's going to happen is it's going to try to build this. Now it's not going to build properly because there's no code, but that's fine. I just want to get it going and get it set up. So we'll go over this a bit in a little bit, but we'll go to settings. And what in here, I need to change the compatibility date to 2025 401. And then the compatibility flags to what is it? It is Node.js compat. Now these are, I honestly don't know exactly what these do, but I believe it just ties with how the framework is built when Cloudflare does build everything. So we have the build, the deploy, where it's pulling it from. Branch, we don't want main, we want staging, since this is our staging worker. And then, and we'll get into variables later. Now, we need to make a custom domain for this to where it's going to like staging.buildwithpixel.com, where we can see it online. So I want to add domain. Now, you can see this says pending. What you may notice is if you go to overview, I bought this through Cloudflare. I would think that it would propagate fine, but it's asking me to replace our name servers with this. Now, go through that process. Make sure that you follow the instructions in this. You'll have to go into your DNS records if you're pulling your domain from somewhere else and swap the name server in there. So if I go to DNS records, you'll see down here that my name servers match. So what it's doing is Cloudflare is checking if my name servers match so that the domain works. So you'll have to make sure that's all good. Once that is good, then in here, so I'm going to add domain, it's pending, but it's going to be a custom domain, and it's going to be staging.build. Okay, so it already has it. So just staging, and then my domain. I'm going to click that. Now that's where we're going to go and where this is going to deploy to. Then make sure within here in Supabase, if you're at home, you go to authentication and then URL configuration. You want to set what that custom domain is, because that's where you're going to for this persistent staging branch. And then you want to set up your redirect URLs. Now, that's essentially whenever you go through the auth process of signing in, all of that is going to redirect you back to this staging environment. Same if you were to do it locally. I don't really mess locally. I do everything within staging now, so it's just up to you. But that's essentially the redirect rules and all that. Now for variables, you're going to have a .env file. That's where everything's held for variables like your URL, your anon key, your service role key, any variables you create throughout the process. Now, you don't want that sent to GitHub because you don't want people to accidentally get access and have control over your environments. So you don't want to show that to anyone. You don't want to record that. You don't want to give that to anyone. That's got to stay. And you want to git ignore that will ignore those files when they get pushed. And we'll set that up and I'll show you. Okay. We have variables that we'll need to put into the build and runtime. But we don't up here, but we're not quite there yet. We will get to that. We set up the service role or the URL configuration. All right, so now we need to go into the Google console and do the URL configuration there. So I'm going to throw this over here so we can see both. And we're going to go to google.console.com, I believe. Just Google, and then you can type Google console. I always forget okay, and then cloud.google.console. Okay, go to your console. We're going to log in. All right, so we're going to select, agree and continue. We're going to select a project and, we'll do new project name. We'll do build with Pixel. Oh, we have to. Oh, okay, maybe we have to create the organization first. So go through the verification, your information. We'll start free. All right, we want to go to API and services, OAuth consent screen, get started, build with Pixel, next, audience. We'll do internal. At buildwithpixel.com. Next, I agree, continue, create. Okay. Now we need to create a client. So we go to client, create client, and you're going to say web application, build with Pixel. And then here is where we need to put our authorized JavaScript URLs. So for mine's the staging. And then if you want the local host, you do that. And then Cloudflare Worker URL. No, we don't need to do that because I'm just going to use the staging. And then the authorized redirect. So this is your callback. So essentially, you take this, and this is your callback, your Supabase project ref. Let's make sure you can see that. Is your ref is when you go to project settings, is this project ID. So you take that, replace that, and then that's your callback for your authorized redirect. Now, this is where when you sign in, it's going to say, "Hey, you're signing in." This is as a user, it's going to say, "Hey, you're signing into this." Now, when we get further, we're going to change this to a custom domain so that it's not this. We want it to say "build with Pixel," but for now, this is fine, and it's staging. So we'll create that. Okay, so within here, you have variables that you're given. Now, this is going to be put into Supabase. So I'm going to save these. You got to save these somewhere safe. I'm going to put it over here, but I'm going to copy this and save it as my client ID. And then I'm going to copy this and save it as my client secret. And then hit OK. Now I need to take that and I need to go to authentication, sign in providers. Okay, we want new users to sign up. Confirm email. I don't think I don't need a confirmation email. I'm gonna save that. Now we're gonna do Google. I just want users with Google for now. You can you can change this as you go, but we're just gonna do Google. So I'm gonna just turn that off. And then I want to turn on Google. Now, enable sign in with Google. This is where you put your client ID and your client secret. And then your callback. This is what we put in. So you need to match within here your callback down here. Now we'll customize this later, but go ahead and put in your client ID and your secret off there. Okay, now we want to set up variables. So point me to where our environment file live so that I can store them. Okay, so we want to be able to go in, and what we're going to do is, and I'll bring up a sort of text file of what you should do, and then I'll also show you on Cloudflare how you should have these variables set up. Now, I'm not going to be doing local work, but if you wanted to use local host and all that, you would go to where your app is, and then you create the .env.local file. I'm not going to do that because I don't use local, but we will be setting it up in Cloudflare. And so we'll set up all of these. Now we're going to need to do it at build time for these public ones. So let's go to variables in Cloudflare. We'll do variable name. So we need the site URL. Now that's essentially your staging site. We'll add that. Now these are fine to see. These are public ones, so they don't need to be encrypted. And then we have the URL. Now this will you're going to have to replace it with your Supabase right here. Let's make sure that you guys can see. Okay, we want to replace that. just in case you didn't see, I just went to here, staging, next public site URL. Okay, and then we're going to want to do the anon key. Now this is public, but there's no good in showing it, so I'm just going to move this over for a little bit just to put it in, and then same with this, and I'll move it back in just one sec. Now remember, you go to API keys, legacy, and then you copy this one. It's going to give you a big string. So copy that. Actually, I don't need to hide it because it doesn't show the whole key. So copy that, and then we can go back to the project overview. And then within here, paste it, save. You'll see it populate down here. And then you want to do, this is what tells it we're in the staging environment. Now, we're going to add these to runtime as well. So add, we want to do text, variable name. I know for future stuff that I'm going to use the Supabase service key. So that one would be called, go to projects, API keys, legacy, service role secret. So it'd be, let me see if it actually, service role key. Now this is a secret. We don't want anyone to see it. And then what you do is in here, you reveal, copy that, and put it into it. So I'm gonna reveal, copy, and then that's a secret, deploy. All right. So, and you see how it's encrypted, so you're not able to see it. So now let's go home there. We'll just bring this back. Okay, so now we're ready for Atlas to deploy the code. So essentially said, hey, we're ready for the framework. I've set up the variables. We want to set up the framework so that everything is secure. We describe what your platform is. It knows that I'm going to be building an agent that's going to help users build this type of framework, so that it can take that into account before, to also for debugging and console errors and stuff, to have like a variable that we can set up to where we can do it on staging, but then it can be deactivated in production. Never to pass variables through the front end. Make sure we're ultra tight and secure. And then also for it to give me the game plan. So then it's going to give me the game plan based off that. Then I'm going to have a look at it, tell it to commit staging, and we can see if all of our connections work. If they work, that's great. If they don't, then we'll debug and see where we need to fix. All right, so it came back and it gave me everything that it's going to go through. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's basically going through what we said. So essentially, the build settings that we provided, secret boundary, I made that priority number one. I don't want any variable secrets that are important to get passed through the front end. You don't want users to see that. That would be bad. It's provided the structure that it's going to do. An example for the .env files, once this goes to the starter kit, what needs to be in Cloudflare. We will be adding this debug console, so I added that. You can see that here, right here. I have it for true in staging so that we can debug, and then in production, it gets turned off. It has a gated set up for that console too, that debug console. Um, Security for auth authorization, how the server.ts file is going to be set up, auth flow, the landing page. What else do we got here? The Cloudflare config based off of what we initially set, a script to make sure that this is a big thing. We're creating a script to protect ourselves so that nothing goes through that shouldn't go through. But that's essentially it. So then what we're going to do is we're going to say, yeah, let's do it. Let's move forward. Let's move forward and get our first app set up and the repo committed so we can test the build. All right. I'm gonna refresh that real quick. It looked like it was compacting, and then send that again. Now it's going to go through, set it up, and then I'll come back if there's any errors. We'll check them out and fix them. All right, so it uh, he set it up. Now, as you can see, we posted to he committed to staging, and then that activated this build in progress on Cloudflare. So it's going through. It built the application. Now it's deploying to our staging domain. uh so that's the beauty of like having a staging environment, having Hermes connected to it, it auto deploying to Cloudflare. So now everything was a success. So this went through on the first try, first go. So now what we can do is we can go up here, type staging dot build with pixel.com. Internal server error. That's not good. So what we got to do is we got to debug this. So and that could be just with a, let's just give this straight to Atlas. But first I want to see what it said it did. And I'm guarantee it's something to do uh with maybe our custom domain, something probably not to do with the framework and all that. But let me see what Atlas said. So first scaffolding is done. App staging push, which we know because we saw it building. It built fine, which is great. Server only. I bet you it's a Cloudflare setting. Um, the be only displays safe metadata. Matches, yeah, around the placeholder non-secret environment values, pass environment values, type check pass, beautiful. For commit, npm audit reports a current moderate advisory through Next OpenNext dependency chain. This suggested would downgrade breakneck, so I did not force it. We should keep an eye on package updates after Cloudflare build proves stable. Okay, for you in Cloudflare trigger. Okay, maybe I didn't have. So I have the URL. Okay, I'm missing Supabase, public Supabase. Let's see our variables. Update inner repo to keep settings consistent on Wrangler. We will auto generate a PR to fix this after the build. Oh, I think that's because the name. So there's something. Okay, so something happened with the Wrangler overwrote our variables in secrets. So I'm going to tell it I get this. All right. I get this. I have these set to build time. they are cut off because I copied and pasted. But our variables and secrets got wiped out. Is that because of the Wrangler file? What needs to be set in variables and secrets first before we recommit? And I get this when going here. So I get internal server error when going here. Okay, so we'll see. Now this is fine. This is the non-key. Like you see that in public anyways. Um, we'll see. We'll see what caused the issue. All right, let's see what Atlas has to say. Push the fix. Okay, so it's got a build in progress. Wrangler treats Wrangler JSON as the source truth of worker config. Custom domain, dashboard variables, but our local Wrangler did not include those variables on the root. So when Cloudflare ran that, will override the remote. That is why your dashboard variables look wiped again. This was not because of Supabase. It was because the deploy command was overriding. Okay, so all right, so I need to re-input all those things again. So this isn't going to work because I need those variables again. So I'm going to update those variables again. You go to your settings, update them here, redeploy, ask Hermes to redeploy, and then we'll check it out. Okay, so I re-put in all these. I asked Atlas to recommit. It just pushed, and as you can see, there's a new build in progress. So we'll let this build, and then I'll see if there's any errors. If that fixed the problem, if it didn't, we'll problem solve and figure it out. All right, so it completed. So let's give it a go. Dot build with pixel.com. Oh, we got somewhere. All right, let's try reload. So it looks like something's there, but something's happening. Okay, so uncut error, missing required public environment variable, next public site URL. So let's check next public site URL. It's there. Maybe next public site URL. Okay, so we'll copy that. Let's get that entire error, throw it in here. We get this error now. However, I have that variable set within Cloudflare. What is causing this? Okay, and then, okay, so let's see um, what Atlas has to say. This is better. So now the site is there. Now there's something on the back end. There could be some code that is a little off. I'm not quite sure, but we'll see what Atlas has to say. But then now we know that our workers working, our site is deployed. Now we just need to figure out these little errors. Okay, so Atlas is getting back to me. As you can see, the site is redeploying. So let's see what it has to say. Root cause found and fixed. It was not Cloudflare lacking the variable. The bug was in our client env helper. The lookup works in node server context, but Next.js only inlines browser environment variables when they are referenced statically. So in the browser bundle, this failed. Even though Cloudflare is set, that is why the browser showed. Okay, so I updated the client.ts file. Commit pushed. Okay, then with safe tested verified, all right. No real secrets. We're committed. They must be available at build time. Oh, they need to be okay. Okay, so I have those at runtime, but I need those variables also at build time. Okay, so we need to go down here. We have app environment, public site URL, public Supabase, a non-key. We need this, which is true. Don't need to encrypt it. This, which is build with pixel. So I'll add that. Build with pixel. Let's make sure it's spelled the same. Build with pixel. And then this, which is tagline. Now these variables, it added them in. It's for my startup kit where someone could put their app name and tagline and then it'll include it. You don't necessarily need that. Okay, can you recommit? I just updated variables. All right, so then we're going to do it again. It's going to recommit. It'll push a deployment, and then we could see what it does. All right, we're back. It built, so let's give it a go. We'll do a hard refresh. Woo, would you look at that? All right, we got it all set up. We got a little debugger here. Oh, that's pretty sweet. Okay, we can see what, okay, open dashboard doesn't go to a page. That could be because we're not signed in. Sign in with Google. Okay. Only be used within its, oh, because I set it to internal on the Google OAuth. So, okay, so that's something we need to go back to here. Okay, so we got this access block because when we set up our Google Cloud Console, we set it to internal. So go to audience, make external. Please choose the publishing status of your external app. App still in development. Your app will only be available to users to you add to list in production. Okay, so in production, because we want other users. Now you could set that to um, uh, you could set that to just internal if you want, and then switch that over. I'm just going to make mine on because there's nothing. No one's going to do anything in this site. There's nothing to get. Um, okay, the user cap limits the number of users grant permission to your app before requesting unapproved, sensitive, or restrictive scopes. Okay, and then let's go back to staging. What do we build with pixel.com? Okay, so what happened there? Oh, I didn't put a period. Okay, and then sign in with Google. Boom. All right. So now this goes back to what I was saying with it's going to look like the Supabase callback URL. And that comes from if you go to here, this is where it's putting here. So we're going to change that later and we'll create a custom domain, which will be in here, right here, custom domain. It's an extra fee, but essentially whenever you go to production, you want people to see choose an account to continue to build with Pixel, not this Supabase link, because then they're going to be like, is this a scam or whatever. But for testing, it's perfectly fine. So I'll go with, oh, never mind. Go back. Let's do that again. Staging dot build with pixel.com. Sign with Google. We'll use the one I'm using right now. continue, boom, and then there's the dashboard. All right. So there you have it. Look at that. We have Supabase hooked up. We have our agent that's able to that created the framework, pushed it to GitHub, deployed to Cloudflare, and then now we have our first basis of construction for our front end that's tied to Supabase staging, our staging, and our agent. Pretty sweet stuff. Now that we have this hooked up, I want Hermes Atlas to be able to create tables, schema, manipulate our staging environment project within Supabase. So within here, hey, Atlas, what do I need to give you so you have full control of our Supabase staging to create schema, tables, buckets, etc. Now, most likely, you could do this multiple ways. Again, this comes back to dealing with a staging environment and dealing with a main production. I am totally fine giving Atlas full on control to our staging environment. That's the beauty of having an agent running all this stuff. It minimizes time of completing. When you get to main, of course, you don't want that access. That's why you put main on a different VPS with no agent and then propagate stuff over. So for this, I'm fine with it having access to variables and stuff on the computer. It has full access to the VPS. So I just need to let it know or I need to tell it, I need the Atlas to tell me what it needs to have full control. I'll put those variables in that spot and then we can test. So let's see what Atlas has to say. Staging to create schema, all that stuff. The clean step is stage only credential bundles stored on the VPS, not pasted into chat. Do not paste the actual values here. Okay. So in Pixel Secrets app Supabase, so I'm going to I don't need that. This, I'm going to go to that repo. I'm going to first check. Uh, I don't believe I have any secrets there right now, but I just want to check. List. Okay, so I just have Hermes and okay. So within here, I have Hermes and an NAN, and that's where my secrets are. It wants me to create a so it wants me to make the directory, the app directory. So this will be for, copy that. Uh, okay, and then I'm gonna do this. Now that brings up this. Now inside that folder, we're gonna put all this stuff in here. This right here is what we'll get from the connection up here. And I believe we want to use direct session pooler. Yeah. Here. And then your password. And your password's your database password for Supabase. But so what we'll do is I'm going to copy this stuff, paste it in here. Now I'm going to change it. Let me just read through this first. I'll change it and then we'll test. Okay, what it gives them CLI operations, direct SQL work. So SQL is within here. Basically, it can create commands and do stuff to manipulate tables and RLS policies, all that kind of stuff. Service role key is basically admin rights. Okay, once that file exists, I could safely install, configure Supabase CLI if needed, link repos app and starter kit to Supabase staging, create migrations under repo source control, create schemas, policies, buckets, see data, verify and on authenticate commit. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so then even if it would give me a full stage, I will not print or reveal. Good. I don't want to ever print staging like crucial environment variables. Minimum credentials I need. Okay, so we'll go ahead and I'm going to update this file, do the same, and then come back. All right. So what you need to know is for the access token, you have to go to your profile. You go to account preferences, access token, and you can generate a new token here. Then that's one of the variables you put in. The when you go to staging, within here for the Postgres, I'm trying direct session pooler, and then you copy this connection string, and then you just replace with your database password. Now, if you forget what your database password is, you change that by just you go to database settings, and you can reset your database password there. So I'm gonna give I'm gonna give Atlas that set of where are we at? I'm gonna give them all of this. So access token was through your user profile, the service role key, you know where to get that, all this stuff, database password, and then this. Now you change this. I'm gonna see if mine works, but we'll verify based off that. Okay, all set and placed. Can you tell me if you have access, and can you create a temp table for me to see and verify everything works? So we'll see if Atlas is able to control tables within here. All right, so let's see what it has to say. I have a working access to Supabase staging for database operations. The temp table. Let's check it out. Look at that. Created a table. Atlas staging, Supabase verification row. Look at that. Okay. Secrets exist. I do not print any secrets. Temp table created. Columns. Verification result pass connected to staging. All that good stuff. You should be able to see it in Supabase. No public policies. That means it exists. Service role key also works. Verified. Okay, that passed. It's not for this staging project. Oh, I may have done that under the other project. Let's see. Okay, so I'll double check that. Huh. Yeah. Supabase management API CLI token does not have staging project access. Okay, so I need to check that. That's my token. That would be maybe I was, if you look at here, let's make sure you can see. If I go to account preferences, account access, I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure. Maybe that's only allowed for the main, but we'll see. Okay, what this means, I can already create beautiful handle storage and min operations with the service role key 2. Okay, so I need to fix that CLI token. Access from Supabase account that owns or has access to the staging project. And then I just need to replace this. Okay. Okay, so it's currently readable. When you have a terminal with sudo access tighten it. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go to here. Whoops. 1 sec. I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to lock this down a little bit more. Copy. And then copy. All right. Okay, so then now I need to check out that CLI. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'll be right back and give you guys an update. All right, so I figured it out with ChatGPT. Essentially, I was talking with ChatGPT and just saying like, why isn't my access token work for the staging persistent branch? And I guess it's because it's a branch under main, and so Atlas was trying to view it in a different way. But knowing that we have our main branch and then there's a branch underneath, we fixed it, and then so we updated our environment variables with this so that it knows the project reference for the staging and the main. And then we'll create. I'm going to create a doc Supabase branching from this. So with that said, we essentially have we we have Hermes Atlas hooked up to Supabase. So now whenever you're designing your agent or whatever you want from your web platform, you can have your agent design the table schema, the profiles, the edge functions, all that good stuff, and have access to Supabase to implement that. And then you could do all your tests on staging. And then when you're ready to go to production, you just migrate that schema to production, and we'll do that. Um, but that's it for today. I know that was a lot, but that's a big that's a big what we just did was it's huge. We have our agent tied to our staging domain with Supabase. Now we can get into the good stuff where we just tell Hermes what we want to build. It will do all the building, and then we could set it up to where it tests and does all that. So we could set up a local environment so it's able to test locally and then push commit it to staging. We look at it and just create a nice little cycle. So very cool. And I look forward to the next episode. All right. Peace.